Let me ask you something before I start. Have you ever been in a room where someone said something so casually cruel about you that you had to check your face to make sure you hadn't visibly reacted? Not screamed at, not confronted, just described, summed up, reduced to a sentence that was apparently so obvious, the person saying it didn't think it needed, lowering their voice. Because that's where this story starts, for me. Not at the beginning. In the middle in a moment, I wasn't supposed to witness at all. My name is Priya. I'm 31. I'm a paralegal at a family law firm in Leicester, which means I spend my professional life helping people document the worst moments of their relationships so they can survive them legally. I'm good at it. I am thorough. I am organized. And I have a very high tolerance for paperwork that would make a normal person weep. I tell you that not to impress you. I tell you because it matters to what comes later. My younger sister is Zara, 28. She has the kind of Instagram account that looks effortless and takes about 4 hours per post to produce. She works in social media for a fashion brand, and she has always, her entire life, been the one that people looked at first when we walked into a room. I want to be clear. I don't mean that as bitterness. It's just a fact, the same way it's a fact that I'm taller and she has better hair. We grew up understanding our respective roles in the family ecosystem. Zara was the spark. I was the infrastructure. We weren't close exactly, but we weren't distant either. We were sisters, in the way that some sisters are a shared history you didn't choose, a complicated loyalty you also didn't entirely choose, and Sunday lunches at mom and dad's every few weeks, where we both pretended the past wasn't sitting in the room with us. Then Zara got engaged to Daniel, and I genuinely was happy for her. That part is important. I want you to know that the emotion I started this story with was not jealousy or resentment. It was actual, real happiness. She'd been with him 2 years. He seemed decent. He made her laugh in a way that was less performative than her usual laugh. 6 months after the engagement, Zara called me. She needed to borrow money. Just a loan, pre. The venue deposit in Santorini came back higher than they quoted. We either pay the shortfall or we lose the booking and everything we've already put in. It's £8,500. I want to just sit with that number for a second. £8,500. I'm a paralegal. I'm not wealthy. I had that money in savings because I am, as established, the infrastructure in my family, and infrastructure saves for emergencies. But she was my sister, and she promised verbally on that phone call, with our mum sitting in the background saying, "It's just a loan." Botcha, she promised it was for the Santorini venue. I transferred the money that same week. Now, I want to tell you about the voice note. 12 days after I made that transfer, I was sitting at my desk at work Tuesday morning, first cup of tea, going through a bundle of financial disclosure documents when my phone buzzed with a WhatsApp notification. Our family group chat, Zara's wed planning. It was a voice note, 64 seconds long, Zara's name above it. I put one earbud in, half listening while I scrolled through a document, and I heard her voice not talking to me, not to the group, talking to someone else. A friend, I would later find out. She'd pressed the wrong contact. She's literally just jealous. That's all it is. Priya's always been the difficult one, the boring, responsible one. I mean, look at her life, yeah? She's 31, still renting a flat with 2 other people, no boyfriend, absolutely nothing going on. She can't stand watching me actually have something beautiful happen to me. Every question she asks about the wedding is basically just a way to make me feel bad about wanting nice things. I took the earbud out. I sat there. My colleague Nadia was talking about something across the desk. The heating was making that clicking sound it makes in winter. Someone down the hall was photocopying something, the rhythmic thunk-thunk of the machine. I picked my tea up, put it back down without drinking it. Because the money. The £8,500. She'd asked for it 9 days before that voice note. And the way she'd described me in it always been. The difficult one didn't sound like a person who'd recently asked that difficult person for £8,500 in good faith. It sounded like a person who'd already decided I was a problem. And here's the other thing. The thing that happened 2 weeks before the voice note, at a family dinner I'm now not able to think about without a certain specific feeling in my chest. Daniel's mother, Sandra, was there. She'd been flown over from Manchester for a meet the family's dinner at Mum and Dad's house in Coventry. She wore a cream blazer and had the particular energy of a woman who has always lived in houses slightly larger than whoever she's talking to. At some point during the main course, she said, not quietly, not aside, but just as part of her normal conversational volume, she said to Daniel, "Your sister-in-law needs to smile a bit more, love." She's been sitting there all evening like she's here to audit the place. Then she laughed, a light, charitable laugh, like she was including me in a joke about myself. Does she always look like this? Or is it just around happy occasions? Sorry, darling, she waved a hand at me. I just mean, some people seem allergic to joy, don't they? I hope she doesn't give the wedding photographs that look. My mum made a small sound and changed the subject. My dad looked at his plate. Zara laughed, not a long laugh, just a breath of one, and said Sandra in that way that wasn't really stopping her, just acknowledging that the thing had been said. And I smiled. I smiled and said, "I'm just tired from work," and I went back to my food. But I remembered it. I remember it now. Here's what you need to know about growing up as the eldest daughter in a British Indian family with a younger sister, who is visibly, obviously, effortlessly beloved. It's not that your parents love her more. I actually believe, when I'm being rational and generous, that my parents love us equally. They would say so. They would mean it. But love and attention are not the same thing. Zara needed more attention. From age 7 or 8, she had these enormous feelings, happiness that filled the whole room, sadness that required management, anger that had to be negotiated with carefully. My parents both came from families where conflict was either shouted through or silently buried, and Zara was the child who couldn't be handled either way, so they learned to be careful with her. I was the child who didn't require that level of careful. I did my homework. I didn't create emergencies. When I had problems, I solved them quietly and then told my parents the resolved version because I didn't want to add to the household load. I became, over years, the person in my family who everyone assumed was fine without checking. I'm not saying this to assign blame. My parents are good people who were doing their best. I'm saying it because it's relevant to how everything I'm about to describe was allowed to happen. After the voice note, I didn't call Zara. I saved it. I saved it to my phone, to my work cloud backup, and to an email thread I sent to myself, labeled Zara Loan Documentation, which I'd started the day I transferred the money because I'm a paralegal, and I document things the way other people breathe. I had the bank transfer confirmation. I had the WhatsApp messages where she'd asked me, including the one where she specifically said for the venue shortfall. I had my mum's voice in the background of that call saying just a loan. And now I had the voice note. I didn't know yet what I was building. I just knew that something didn't add up, and that my job had trained me to be very, very careful when things didn't add up. The thing that didn't add up revealed itself 6 weeks later through Zara's bridesmaid, Chloe. Chloe is not a bad person. She is someone who cannot hold a secret for longer than 3 Prosecco's, which is a quality I have come to genuinely appreciate about her. We were at Zara's engagement party a Saturday evening at a wine bar in Birmingham. Twinkly lights, too many flower arrangements, the kind of event that's half celebration and half content creation. I'd been helping stack gift bags near the bar when Chloe appeared beside me with a glass in each hand, slightly flushed, clearly relieved to have found someone not actively posing for a photo. "Can I just say," she said, handing me one of the Prosecco's without asking, "I think it's really lovely that you helped out with Daniel's family." I looked at her. With the flights and the hotel. For his lot, I kept my face very neutral. It's a skill my job has given me. "Of course," I said. His mum was dead set against the whole Santorini thing, said it was too far, too expensive. And then when they agreed to come, Chloe glanced sideways. I don't know exactly what the figures were, but Zara told me you'd sorted it, which is massive. His family being there obviously means everything to him. I nodded. "It does," I said. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, stood at the sink with the water running. His family's flights and hotel, not the venue. She'd asked me for money for the venue, and she had used it to fly over Daniel's family, his mother, Sandra, who'd sat at my parents' dinner table and called me allergic to joy, and pay for them to stay in a 4-star hotel in Santorini. The water ran cold. I turned it off. I went back to the party and smiled for photos. 3 days later, I went over to Zara's flat. She lived in a converted Victorian terrace in Digbeth with Daniel. The hallway always smelled like the scented candles she burned and the specific laundering smell of Daniel's cycling gear hanging on the radiator. I told her I knew. Not angrily. I've learned that anger reads as instability to people who want to dismiss you. I told her calmly, precisely, what Chloe had told me, and I asked her to tell me the truth about where the 8,500 pounds had gone. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said yes. It had gone toward Daniel's family's travel. His family couldn't afford Santorini. His mum was going to miss the wedding. I couldn't let that happen. Why not tell me that? Because I knew you'd say no. Pause. Just that. Because I knew you'd say no. I said, if they couldn't afford to come, why not choose a venue everyone could afford to get to? Or tell them honestly that you couldn't cover the cost. Zara looked at me like I'd suggested something borderline offensive. You don't understand what it means to Daniel. I understand what 8,500 pounds means to me, I said. She pressed her lips together. I'll pay you back. I said it was a loan. When? After the honeymoon. Things settle. We'll set something up. I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, okay, I'd like something in writing. And that was the moment that one sentence, I'd like something in writing, that flipped everything. I didn't hear from Zara for 11 days after that conversation. On the 12th day, my mother called me. My mother calls me every Sunday morning at 10, regular as weather. This was a Wednesday at 7 in the evening, which meant something had happened. Priya, the way she said my name, that single word with a different texture than usual, told me before she said anything else. I need you to tell me what's going on with you and Daniel. I sat down. What do you mean? Zara says, a pause. My mum choosing words carefully, which she doesn't normally have to do with me. She says there's been some inappropriate behavior, texts, that you've been, flirting with him. She showed your father some screenshots. Mum, and she's very upset. She's been crying all week. She says she doesn't know how to face you at the wedding. Mum, stop. Silence. I need you to listen to me carefully, I said. I've never flirted with Daniel. There are no texts. Whatever she showed you, either she's made something up or she's completely misread something, completely innocent. This is about the money. What money? She borrowed 8,500 pounds from me to pay for Daniel's family's flights and hotel. She told me it was for the venue. I asked her for written confirmation of repayment, and now suddenly this is about the money, Mum. My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, carefully, Priya, your sister is 3 weeks away from her wedding. Whatever is happening between you. Whatever is happening. Mum, she's accusing me. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying this is not the time. I put my hand over my eyes. Pressed. The way you press when you're trying to hold something in. She made up an accusation, I said, very quietly, specifically so that my asking for my money back would look like spite instead of a legitimate request. That's what she did. My mother said, I'll speak to her. She didn't call back that night. Let me tell you what those 2 weeks before the wedding were like. I went to work. I made a file. I printed the bank transfer confirmation, the WhatsApp messages, the voice note transcript, the email from my own address to my own address on the day I transferred the money, time-stamped. I did not show these to my parents yet, partly because my mother's I'll speak to her had told me exactly where my parents were, and I didn't want to make a unilateral move before I understood the full board, and partly because I was trying to figure out what I actually wanted, not what I was entitled to, not what was fair, what I wanted. I wanted my sister to call me and say she'd lied. That's what I wanted. I wanted one phone call where she didn't ask for anything and didn't defend herself and just acknowledged what she'd done to me. That call didn't come. What came instead, on a Tuesday night, was a text from my dad. Priya, Mum and I feel it would be best if you came to the wedding and we all handled this after, for the sake of Zara. We hope you understand. That text right there. For the sake of Zara, not for the sake of the truth, not for the sake of me, for the sake of Zara, who had borrowed my money under false pretenses, fabricated an accusation against me to discredit my request for repayment, and was now being gently shielded by our parents who needed to believe she was still the person they'd always been careful with. I sat on my bed for a long time with my phone in my hand. Then I typed, "I'll be there." Not because I forgave her, because I needed to see the full picture. And I want to be honest about this, because some part of me still, despite everything, did not want to be the reason my sister remembered her wedding as incomplete. Even that part of me was probably wrong. I don't know. I still don't entirely know. There's a woman at my firm named Nadia. She's been a paralegal for 12 years. She has this specific quality of listening. She doesn't move her face while you're talking, not because she doesn't care, but because she's filing everything, and she'll respond properly when you're done. I trust her professional judgment more than almost anyone I know. I told her all of it the Friday before the wedding. When I finished, she didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, "Did you save the voice note?" "Yes." "Did you save the conversation where she specified the venue?" "Yes." "Do you have the bank transfer confirmation?" "Yes." "Good." She picked up her pen and tapped it once on her notebook. "Go to the wedding. Don't do anything. Watch." People who've been behaving badly for a while tend to continue behaving badly, especially at events where they feel powerful. She paused. "And if she tries to make a public move against you, you'll know how to respond. I shouldn't do it at the wedding, though." "No," she said. "After. Always after." The morning I flew to Santorini, my mom hugged me at the airport with the specific quality of a woman who was hoping very hard that a hug was enough to solve what a conversation couldn't. She smelled like the rose water she's always worn. "Be good, Bacha," she said. I hugged her back. I didn't say what I was thinking. Lurt too. My dad patted my shoulder. He's a man who shows love through proximity and logistics. He'd booked my taxi, confirmed my check-in, sent me a list of the restaurants near the hotel. He didn't say anything about Zara or Daniel or any of it. Neither did I. We got on the plane. The hotel was beautiful. Of course it was. Zara had excellent taste, and whatever else had happened, she'd chosen a place with white walls and blue shutters, and a view of the caldera that made you understand, physically, why people flew 800 miles to stand in front of it. I put my suitcase down and stood at the window for a moment. I thought about the 8,500 pounds. I thought about Sandra at that dinner table, saying allergic to joy. Then I ran a bath and went to sleep. The wedding was on a Friday evening. The ceremony was at 6 o'clock on a terrace overlooking the sea. 104 guests I know because I'd helped address the invitations 6 months earlier, before any of this had started. The sky was the particular pink-orange of a Greek sunset that looks like someone turned a filter on, but is entirely real. Zara looked extraordinary. That's the truth. She wore a dress she'd spent 7 months finding, and it was worth 7 months. Her hair was done up with small white flowers. She was crying before she reached the top of the aisle. I was standing with the other guests in the third row. I watched my mother reach into her bag and bring out a small velvet pouch. The bangles. I knew them immediately. A set of 6 gold bangles that had belonged to my maternal grandmother. My mother had worn them on her own wedding day. She had always said not formally, just in the way mothers say things they mean, that they would go to the first daughter who got married. Zara was the first daughter getting married. My mother pressed the velvet pouch into Zara's hands during the receiving line, before the photographs. I watched it happen from 4 people away. Zara opened it, looked inside, and put her arms around our mum with a sound I haven't heard from her since we were children. I looked at the caldera. The water was very blue. I had always known, intellectually, that those bangles would probably go to whoever got married first. I just never stood close enough to the moment to feel what it actually felt like. I want to be honest. This is not a part of the story I'm proud to include, because what I felt was not noble. It was not above anything. I stood at my sister's wedding and felt small in a way that had nothing to do with money or lies. It had to do with those 6 gold bangles in a velvet pouch and years of being the one who was fine without checking. I picked up a glass of wine. I kept going. The reception dinner. 60 people on a terrace, string lights, a playlist that had clearly been curated with the same care as everything else. The food was exceptional. I sat at a table with cousins and 2 couples from Daniel's side, who were pleasant, and entirely unaware of any of what had been happening. We talked about Santorini, about their journey, about what everyone did for work. Perfectly ordinary. I was fine. At the bar, about 90 minutes in, I saw Sandra holding court with 3 other women, all laughing at something. She looked, in the light of the fairy lights, entirely content. She'd flown to Santorini for free on someone else's emergency savings and was having the time of her life. I went back to my table. It was Chloe who told me. Of course it was Chloe. She found me near the dessert table at 11 o'clock, an hour after Daniel's speech, her eyes slightly too bright. Can I just... She pulled me slightly aside. Daniel said something to Jamie during the speeches. Well, after the speeches, when they were having a drink. Jamie was one of the groomsmen. Jamie told me because he thought I knew already. I waited. Chloe pressed her lips together. Daniel told Jamie that when they were talking about costs, how much everything ended up being, he said that his family being there was basically down to you, that you'd put in the money. He said it like he seemed quite proud of it, like he thought you knew and were okay with it, and it had all worked out. I looked at her. He doesn't know you don't know, Chloe said. He genuinely thinks you were fully in on it. He thinks Zara told you everything, and you agreed. The string lights overhead, the sound of 60 people talking. Somewhere, someone was laughing very loudly. I said, "Thanks for telling me." Chloe said, "Are you Priya? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. And I went back to the table, and I finished my dessert, and I stayed until midnight because I had committed to staying until midnight, and then I went to my room. I didn't cry. I want to be accurate about that. I sat on the edge of the bed, and I looked at the window, and I thought about what Daniel not knowing meant. It meant Zara had taken my money, told Daniel a version of events in which I was a willing and generous participant, and simultaneously told my parents a version in which I was a jealous, inappropriate troublemaker making false claims about money. She'd told different stories to everyone, and the only person who knew all the stories was me. I opened the notes app on my phone. I wrote down what Chloe had said, with a timestamp. Then I slept. The morning after the wedding, I knocked on Zara's hotel room door at 8:30. Daniel answered, still in a dressing gown, surprised in the way of a man who had been very recently married and was not expecting a visitor before breakfast. "Is Zara awake?" "Yeah, He turned, called back into the room. "Zar, Priya's here." She appeared a minute later. No makeup, hair still pinned from the previous night. She looked at me with a very specific expression, not guilty, not relieved, but cautious. The expression of someone who has been waiting for a door to open and isn't sure which side they want it to open from. I looked at Daniel. "Can I have 5 minutes with her alone?" He looked between us. Then he said, "I'll get coffee downstairs," in the particular tone of a man who has understood that this is not about him. When the door closed, Zara sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't sit down. "I know what you told Mom and Dad," I said. "I know what you told Daniel, and I know what you told me. 3 different stories." She looked at her hands. "Daniel thinks I volunteered. Mom and Dad think I'm jealous and inappropriate. And you told me a lie about a venue. Priya, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to tell you that I have the voice note, the transfer confirmation, and the WhatsApp thread where you specifically said venue shortfall. I have them documented." Silence. "I'm also going to be sending you a formal repayment request when we're home. From the firm. Not threatening, requesting. A schedule that works for both of us." She looked up. "Why are you doing it like this?" "Because it works," I said. "And because I'm tired." A long pause. The sea outside. The sound of someone somewhere starting a shower in an adjacent room. Then Zara said, in a different voice, smaller, without the practiced layer she usually kept between herself and anything difficult, "I knew you'd say no if I told you the truth." "Yes," I said. "You said that before. His mum was going to miss the wedding. She did miss the wedding. She was just physically present." Zara blinked. "Sandra sat at Mum's table and called me allergic to joy," I said. "She was in Santorini because of my 8,500 pounds. Something shifted in Zara's face. Not an apology. Not yet. Something that looked like, for the first time, genuinely reckoning with all of the picture, rather than just her portion of it. I picked up my bag. I don't want to lose you as my sister, I said. I want to be clear about that. But I also don't know how to go back to how things were when I know you could do this. I left before she answered. I don't know what her answer would have been. Maybe that's why I left. I want to step back from this story for a moment and say something honestly. I'm not sure I handled everything right. That's not a rhetorical move. I genuinely don't know. I could have confronted her sooner. I could have been less controlled about it. There's probably a version of me that called her immediately after the voice note and had the screaming argument, and it either resolved things faster or burned everything down sooner. I don't know which it would have been. What I do know is this. In families, in particular kinds of families where conflict is managed, by managing the most volatile person in the room, there tends to be a child who learns to be the infrastructure, the one who keeps receipts, not because they're suspicious by nature, but because they've learned, slowly and not consciously, that their experiences will not be taken on faith the way the other child's experiences are. I don't think my parents are bad people. I think they were scared of the version of Zara that came out when she was cornered. And I think they counted on me being the person who would absorb the consequences of that and stay quiet. What I keep thinking about is something Nadia said to me the week after we got back. She said, "You did everything right, and you're still sad. Why do you think that is?" And I didn't have a good answer, because being right doesn't mean you get what you were actually looking for. What I was looking for, under all the documentation and the formal repayment request and the careful language, was for my sister to have been someone different than she turned out to be. And no amount of legal paperwork fixes that. Zara paid back the £8,500. It took 8 months. I'd sent the formal request to her personal email, not through the firm, not a solicitor's letter, just a formal document I drew up myself with a repayment schedule and the documentation attached. She didn't respond for 3 weeks. Then she called me. It was a short call. She said she was going to do the schedule. She said she was sorry. She said it in the voice of someone who was not entirely sure what she was apologizing for, but understood that it was required. I said, "Okay, thank you. We talk now. Monthly, roughly. It's polite. It's careful. We don't talk about the wedding, or the money, or the voice note. We talk about mom and dad, about work, about normal things. We are sisters in a different register than we used to be. A register I don't have a name for yet. Not estranged, not restored. Something in between that doesn't have a word. Mom never apologized. Not specifically. She called me a week after I got back from Santorini and talked for 40 minutes about everything except what had happened. And at the end, she said, 'I'm glad the wedding was nice.' I said, 'It was beautiful.' She sounded relieved. I've thought about whether to push for the conversation. Maybe I should. I go back and forth on it. The bangles. I think about the bangles sometimes. Not with bitterness, I want to say. Just they're there, in my mind, like a detail that means something I haven't finished understanding yet. My grandmother wore them. My mother wore them. Now Zara wears them. That's how it was always going to go. I was always going to be the one standing 4 people away, watching. I don't know what to do with that except keep living and see what becomes of it. Last month, Nadia and I had lunch, and she asked me how things were with my family. I told her. She listened. At the end, she said, "Do you think Zara knows, now, what she did?" I thought about that for a long time. Then I said, "She knows what she did. I don't think she fully knows why. And I don't know if that makes it better or worse." Nadia nodded. "That's probably the most honest answer to that question anyone's ever given me," she said. This is a story about what happens when the responsible one stops absorbing everything quietly. About what it costs. About what you get back and what you don't. I didn't win. I just stopped pretending the game was fair. Here's what I want to leave you with. There's someone in most families who is the infrastructure, the one people lean on, count on, tell themselves is fine without asking. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're the one being leaned on. The question isn't whether to stop. The question is, what do you do with what you find out when you finally look up and look at the full picture? Tell me in the comments. If you found out a family member had lied to you about money and your parents defended them to protect the peace, would you forgive them, confront them, or find a third option nobody's named yet? I'll read every single one.